Hi, everyone. Today is Tuesday, August 24th, live streaming from Chicago. I'm Ben Greiner, Director of Apple Technology at Ntiva. And with me today is Paul Newton. Paul is the Channel and Sales Manager at Extensis. And today we're going to be talking primarily about the Extensis Universal Type Server and fonts in general, but I also want to give Paul a chance to talk about some of the other products Extensis has. Before we get into that, and I do want to get into talking about our long history together, Paul, and thank you for joining us. I just want to touch on some recent Apple news. And Ross may or may not be joining us. If he does, I might hand it over to him, but it looks like he didn't make it. So I'm going to get right into Zoom. So Zoom, which is what we are using here today, beginning November 1st of this year, Zoom users will be required to update their Zoom software to ensure it is no more than 9 months behind the current version. That sounds like an easy task, 9 months, but you would be surprised to learn, maybe not, that a lot of people never update their software, and so sometimes they get behind. And so to accommodate this change, Ntiva will be activating silent automated patching for Zoom. And we're going to start that on September 1st. So if you're in our system, if you're a client of ours, in our Apple management system, which all of our clients should be, although because of the acquisition of Forget Computers by Ntiva, we're still working to get some of the legacy Ntiva clients enrolled in the new system. But there's nothing really for you to do. We're just sharing this information. We sent an email out to all the primary contacts, and I'm talking about it here. The Zoom app will automatically be updated. If somebody is in a meeting, it will only get updated when they're done with that meeting and Zoom is closed. So we've done lots of testing on this, but the goal really is to not interrupt anyone and just allow everyone to have the most up-to-date and functioning Zoom for seamless meetings. And I see Ross is joining us. And Ross, I just finished talking about our Zoom update. And are you there? He's almost there. He's muted.
Yep. Slowly loading.
Okay.
Glorious thing.
That's okay. Well, hey, thanks for joining us. I just stole your thunder and talked about the Zoom update we're rolling out. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but I pretty much mentioned, Zoom's requiring updates past 9 months. We're going to help everyone out who's a client of ours enrolled in the system, and we're going to start auto patching Zoom to ensure that everything works.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the long and short of it. Just remember, this is only for Macs.
Only for Macs, yes, and only for Macs enrolled in our system. If you're not a client, or you are a client and you're not sure if you're enrolled in our system, reach out to us to confirm.
Yeah.
I also want to mention, because email security, I mean, the amount of phishing attempts that are going on out there is through the roof. I mean, I think it used to be, I would talk about, we'd see this once a week. I think we're seeing this on a daily basis. Like I'm personally getting phished either through my phone or my email or whatever. So I want to remind everyone to be diligent, but also in our internal discussions, it was brought to my attention that Microsoft has a product called Defender for Office 365. If you're on a certain license of 365, you may already have this. If you're on what a lot of us are on, the business, sort of the business basic plan, it's an add-on. And Microsoft Defender basically is an additional cloud-based email filtering service that helps protect your organization. So I'm starting to have conversations with people about this. If you're not sure if you have it, you think you might need it, reach out to your account manager, ask them about it. But it's all about defense in depth. You've heard me talk about this before. You can't have just a seatbelt in your car protecting you. You need the airbags, you need the anti-lock brakes, you need the, I don't know, what other protections do we have in a car these days? You get my point. We have to keep being diligent about this. And this is a tool that I think is developed recently, or at least has come to my attention recently as something that we should investigate. So the last thing I want to mention is, let's see, Matt. Well, no, I'm gonna skip that. Let's get right into it. As a reminder, Paul Newton from Extensis. Paul and I have known each other for many years. Paul, you've been with Extensis for 16 years, correct? So I think we must have known each other for at least 16 years, because you've been in this business focused on creative professionals. I've been doing this for over 20 years now. And, we have a great relationship with Extensis because of the overlap in our clients, creative professionals, and more so around fonts. And fonts are still a thing, very popular today. And I thought we could talk first about the history a little bit of around Extensis, specifically around Suitcase. Do you remember the original name Suitcase?
Yeah.
Could you describe why fonts were called Suitcases, or why your product was called Suitcase back in the day?
Yeah, so that's probably what we're most known for, is the Suitcase product. It was back in the day, I think you had to have a file that would display the font on your screen, and then a file that would help print it. And when you put those together, it would be what they call a suitcase. So that's where the name Suitcase came from. And through the years, we've developed it. We kind of brought some other technology into it. And the name currently is Suitcase Fusion. And we have a team product called Suitcase Team Sync as well. So for teams that are managing fonts that way, it's a great tool as well. But then for more enterprise level, for people that need to manage fonts and work groups or teams of people, we offer Universal Type Server, which is what we work with mostly with Ntiva on. And I think we'll go a little more into that in a bit, but
yeah.
Yeah, so
you can see I pulled up the Extensis page here, and I see you guys have a font area where you talk about Suitcase Fusion, which is really more the personal font management tool, right?
Yep.
And then the Suitcase Team Sync, which is kind of for small teams. Would you say what 10 or fewer size, or is there no limit today?
There's no limit. It's probably for smaller teams that are looking to manage their fonts through our cloud. But it's basically using the Suitcase Fusion interface and syncing all of them together so that they get the fonts from our cloud. So, and then Universal Type Server is really a much more, I would say, enterprise level, where you can actually take the fonts. Well, I guess that actually brings up another topic, like why worry about fonts to begin with? Because it's just a font. So what? But what fonts are really a piece of software that someone's created. These organizations called foundries have developers that create fonts, and each one has an end user license agreement associated with it. So it can be really confusing to know how you can use a specific font. Like how many did you buy? How many people did you buy it for to use it? Is it for web use? Is it for print use? Is it all these different factors? And so what Universal Type Server does is allows an IT department or any kind of online admin to basically go in and apply all the information about the font licensing that the company owns. So you can actually take the receipt for the purchase of the fonts and the end user license agreement of each font and upload it into the admin interface. So you have a record of everything that you own. Creatives love to hoard fonts. So they bring in fonts from home. They download them off the internet. They took them from their last company and they bring them into a workflow, and that your company is at risk because they're being brought in. And if they're printed or used in a way that you don't own them, or used in a way that the end user license agreement doesn't allow, it's putting the company at risk for a lawsuit, actually. So, and that does happen. So
that definitely happens. I mean, there are companies, like you mentioned, font foundries. If they see a font used in an ad, whether it's digital or print, they will investigate if that font is licensed. And we've seen that where people have been called out for not properly licensing the font for that usage. And so Extensis Universal Type Server does help with that. I want to go back a little bit because you mentioned something that I think a lot of the people I talk with struggle they're not aware of, and that is fonts are applications. There are many applications, and if you bought one in 1984, it may not work the way it used to in today's digital environment. And PostScript was the long standing standard for many years, PostScript fonts. And today, OpenType fonts are the standard, unless I'm already behind and there's a new standard. But is OpenType okay?
That's correct. Yeah.
And I still see designers clinging to these PostScript fonts as if there's something sacred and special about them, and really, they should be replaced with OpenType fonts today. And I see I got a little chat alert, so let's see what this is. Okay, yeah, just a comment from one of the attendees. UTC, which is Universal Type Client, and UTS, Universal Type Server, has been great for us. It helps us make the fonts we have licensed available. We also disabled local font loading for individuals, so it forces creatives to go through the process when they are missing a font. And yeah, thanks for sharing, Brian. And just to finish up what I was saying, so many people expect fonts to continue working indefinitely, whether they bought them or not. That's a different issue. But really, fonts have been updated over the years and improved over the years. And if I had a font library that was full of PostScript fonts, I might consider getting rid of that and replacing it with entirely OpenType. Keeping the PostScript around only for archival purposes. But even then, if I had to recreate a job, I would want to replace those fonts. And we could spend all day talking about fonts. So maybe we should get out of those weeds. But the other thing you mentioned is something that I see people trip on, is when we say universal type server, what does that really mean? Because sometimes I talk to people and they're like, well, why don't we just put the fonts on a file server? Why can't we just do that? And it's not the same, right? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you bet. Well, so you can put a font or fonts in a server and say they're in a certain folder and tell people to go get them if they need them. But that isn't going to keep your fonts super organized at all. What we do, and if you were to on an initial install of Universal Type Server, you actually take all the fonts, collect all the fonts you own as a company, you ingest them into Universal Type Server, and as they come in, they're scanned for duplicates or any kind of ones that are why is the word not
corrupt?
Corrupt.
Yeah,
corrupt.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. And as they're brought in, and then they're brought into what we call a font vault, and they're tagged with a special what we call font sense ID. So it takes all these different criteria from the font and applies this font sense ID. And then what happens is you can go in and apply all the licensing information to each font or group of fonts. And so, if you have 10 people that have access to it, say you have 15 people in your work group, but only 10 can have access to that font at a time, you can actually set alerts to let you know that you've exceeded the licensing, that type of thing. So the other thing that's cool about it from a creative side of it is that it has, the creatives are using it because it's allowing them to preview fonts, pick the fonts they might want to have. You can actually turn on and off so if you have 10,000 fonts, you don't want them all running at the same time, obviously, because it's going to slow your machine down. So you can actually temporarily disable fonts so that they're not running in the background and turn them on when you need to. And the cool part is if you have creatives working with Adobe Creative Cloud, someone's working on an InDesign document and they send that document over to a teammate. If you didn't have Universal Type Server, they might not have the same font that the person that created the document has. So when they go to open it, you're going to see either potentially a substituted font or a missing font, and then you're stuck. It kind of slows the workflow down. So what this does is Universal Type Server tags each font with a special ID, and so it travels with it in the document. So when they open it, you're always having the same font. So.
And I think it's worth stopping right there and just focusing on that for a minute, because so many people have what they think are the same font because it has the same name, but it's actually a different cut or variation the font. Maybe it's even an old PostScript versus a new OpenType.
Right.
Although those names have changed, they changed the names to try to avoid that. But Apple has not been a friend to us in some cases with operating systems that use fonts embedded with the exact same names as fonts that everyone was using. Helvetica comes to mind as one of those fonts that they just cause massive problems with because they name the font exactly the same name as say a Helvetica PostScript, which was technically a different cut of the font. And so to your point, Paul, we've got two designers without a font, without Universal Type Server. They think they're using the same font, but they're not, and they're passing things back and forth, and it's not until it's too late, it goes to press, and now you see that terrible line break because the kerning was completely different. And
Exactly.
so that's a huge problem, and I know we do a lot more digital work today than ever, and so maybe those who don't do print think this is not a problem, but if you're doing print, it's a serious problem. And the OpenType fonts are meant for both print and web, so that's another advantage to consider OpenType. And even on the web, I would think you'd want to make sure you're using the same version when building and passing things around, so they don't get shifted in even the slightest way. And then you mentioned activating fonts, and I want to touch on the fact that even though machines today are super powerful and they're a lot easier to work with than back in the day when I was a designer in the 90s, it's still beneficial to not have thousands of fonts activated, because every time one opens an application, it has to read in all those fonts that are active. And if you have a nice clean library of even 100 fonts, that's going to open much faster than if you have a library of 1,000 active fonts. And when I say active, it means it's either loaded into the Mac OS operating system through something like FontBook, or it's activated through something like Extensis Universal Type Server or Suitcase Fusion. One other thing I have noticed, Chris Youngstead asked me to mention this, and Chris Youngstead is our local font guru. He said one of the biggest problems that we're seeing on our support desk today is people are trying to use too many font management solutions at the same time on the same computer. For example, FontBook, Monotype has something. We know Extensis, even Adobe Fonts has a solution. And a lot of these solutions conflict and fight over each other and cause confusion to the computer and to the person sitting in front of it. I would say in our history and doing the due diligence of trying to find the best solution for our clients, Universal Type Server is still the one solution that does like everything we need it to do. And when we use Universal Type Server, we try to lock everything else out and not let it get in the way of that font management. And the other thing we're trying to do with that font management is, historically, we would run this on an internal server. Then those start going away, and we kept Mac Minis around just to run Universal Type Server. And now today, because I think it's safe to say, Ross, Apple doesn't really have a server anymore, right? Can I say that?
Technically it's there, but the amount of management capabilities and the power of server.app has really fundamentally changed over the last couple of years. So we've generally been trying to spin those down and opt instead for cloud solutions.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say Apple is not focused on building a server. If they came out with a server tomorrow, I would be very disappointed in them, because I think, yeah, they're embracing the cloud, and there's no reason why anyone needs to run. I won't say no reason. There's probably a reason people need to run an Apple server. But a lot of the technologies that were in Apple server have moved to the cloud or moved to the desktop, including things like caching, software applications, and things like that. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Let's get back to fonts. So what we're doing today is, so we moved from hosting UTS in-house, and now we want to get it off these old Mac Minis into the cloud. So we worked with Extensis and built a cloud-hosted solution for Universal Type Server. Now, that being said, if you do have your own infrastructure and you're competent in managing that infrastructure, whether it's in-house or in the cloud, you can run Universal Type Server on a Windows machine. And when we put it in the cloud, I can't remember the exact hosting provider that we use, but we use a VM running Windows, and we spin up Universal Type Server, and then we build it, and then we import the fonts, and then we point the client applications to that server. And Paul, could you talk a little bit about that conversation, how Universal Type Client talks to Universal Type Server?
Yeah.
It's not just going to a file server and grabbing the fonts, right?
Right. No, it's connecting into the server and allowing. So basically, the admin sets which fonts that they want the users to have certain access to. So you can actually restrict font usage to certain groups of people, or have it open to everyone. That's the great part about it, is it's so flexible that way. And we're very excited to have Ntiva as our only our go-to Universal Type Server hosted partner. So for people who don't want to have it on premise and want to run it in the cloud, you guys are offering a special package for people to do that. So very excited about that. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for working with us on that. I think I was beating you up for years, asking for a cloud-hosted solution, and then one day I think you're like, well, why don't we just, I said we need to do this, and you said you could help, so we put something together. And like I said, you don't have to go through us if you have your own infrastructure you want to support it on. Extensis makes it very clear what it will run on. But Extensis does not offer their own, hosted solution for UTS. I know you have that other solution that's cloud-based, but there are some limitations to that today. Suitcase TeamSync, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, TeamSync, that's a great solution for like smaller work groups, and that doesn't, as great as it is, and I love it. I mean, and that's kind of the way like a lot of people are going with the cloud. It basically it doesn't have all of the font compliance components that Universal Type Server does. So you're still kind of like hoping people aren't bringing fonts into the workflow that aren't your company's. So, but with Universal Type Server, you have all those extra safety precautions, not allowing people to bring in fonts that aren't licensed. You can even run reports with Universal Type Server on which fonts are being used the most, which ones aren't being used. How often are you exceeding the limits on your licensing? So it's a much more, lots of large printing houses, creative organizations use it. So yeah.
Well, not to pick on freelancers, but historically, I've seen many situations where a freelancer will get called into a job, and of course the freelancer has their own collection of fonts, and so they'll use something from their collection, and it'll find its way into an environment where it's never authorized or allowed, or just causes massive confusion because suddenly the team doesn't have the same font that this freelancer brought in. And that's what I like about Universal Type Server. If things get out of control, it's like, well, there's one source of truth, and that is Universal Type Server. And that's where everyone points to. That's where they get the fonts. If a font, does somehow get into the system and it needs to be eradicated, we go and clean it up centrally. And that, like I said, is the source of truth. So there's some workflow involved in all this, and it's very powerful. And a lot of people maybe don't quite understand it until they start using it. But if you're having any font issues, or you manage a team that uses fonts, I highly recommend it. And if you want to host it in the cloud, reach out to us. Or if you want to host it on your own environment, we reach out to us. We can help you get started. Let's see. So we do have 6 more minutes. I try to keep this to half an hour, and I'm looking at my notes to see if there's anything I missed. Paul, do you want to take a few minutes and just talk about some of the other Extensis products that you guys offer? Because I know they're all, creative focused.
Yeah, you bet. So you've heard all about the font side of our solutions. We also offer digital asset management solutions. So basically managing assets in a work group of people. Imagine like someone puts a photo shoot on their desktop, and someone puts it in a file, other things on a server in a folder structure, and it's impossible to find anything. So we have Portfolio is what has been around the longest. It's what we're really well known for in the space, and it helps work groups of people manage assets, and it has another feature to it called Net Publish that allows you to take your catalogs and publish them externally. And with micro websites, you can have as many micro websites as you want, and as many people as you want accessing those as well. So it's limited.
And then you have something new, right? That's
yeah.
Let's see.
So Portfolio is an on-premise solution, so you can host it in a cloud, AWS or Azure. We have a new thing called Extensis Connect, and what it does is it's not, I wouldn't say it's as granular or in-depth as Portfolio can get, but we're calling it kind of a collaborative workspace where people with teams of people can actually create simple libraries and share these assets between each other. So it's kind of in this infancy. We just released this newest piece to it that's really cool, where you can actually share a set of assets with someone external to the Connect product. So you just send them a link and they can just go and access the assets right away. So and we're finding that, especially with the pandemic and everything, it's a great way for people to use the cloud to have it instead of using their internal servers. So
yeah, I was going to see, I have an account, and I do have some images here. I should have preloaded the login, but here we go. So if I go to the assets, I've got some folders here, and I actually brought these in directly from Box. So it was very cool. I went to upload, and you can choose your local drive. You can choose Dropbox, Google Drive, or Box. I chose Box, and then I authenticated, selected some images. It brought it in here, and now I have the ability to view them, tag them, download them, convert them, I think, from different file sizes. And I'm not really good at this yet because I'm still learning it, but it's pretty simple, and looks like it's really powerful.
It's very straightforward. It's pretty, like, people ask me for demos of it all the time, and I'm like, really, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You can walk through it. I mean, like when on the left you have those folders on the left. It's so easy just to create a folder and add assets to it. Like there's that little plus in the box. You can just click that,
another folder,
create a new folder. Simple. And then if I don't know, if you wanted to click on an asset in one of the other folders, I think if you go up to share in the upper right, that's where you can, that's where once you linked up here, you share that.
After I click share,
and then if you selected all these assets, they would all be gathered in that link, and then you could just share it with someone who could just log in, and they don't even have to have a Connect account. They just log in and get the assets. So
I think for anyone who wants to get started with digital asset management, this seems like a really great place to start, because it's super easy. It's cloud hosted, and then you just get a quick visual. So check it out. I want to wrap up by visiting our support site, which remains support.forgetcomputers.com, because it's going to be a while before we can move that domain. But if we go to Ntiva, we have some new articles here. I just want to call out a few of them. And let's see, where are they? Okay, here's one: picking the best Mac for a college-bound student. I know it might be a little late for this article since I think kids are already going back to school. I know I've got one son who's already there and another that's going back next week. And this talks about, getting a new Mac. And I did get, and Ross, I'm glad you're here. We can talk about this briefly. I was able to get a new M1 for my son going back to school. Took advantage of the Apple education pricing, also free AirPods for the student, which was cool. And a trade-in. He had an old, 2000, I think 2014. So this is 6 to 7 year old technology. And I still, through the trade-in program, got somewhere between $200 and $250 off the price of that machine, plus 0% APR if you want to take advantage of that. So great deals from Apple right now. And the M1, okay, we've talked about this before. It's the future. We're all going to be using M1s soon. I had no problems buying a base M1 for a college student. I still hesitate recommending an M1 for someone in the business world, at least without testing. Ross, do you agree with that? Anything you'd add to that?
I think that any organization should get their hands on at least one M-series device. We'll see as how Apple changes their nomenclature and how things are going to work going forward. But by getting a single device at least into testing, if not into production sooner rather than later, it'll put organizations in a good place to confirm that their workflows, their applications, especially if you're working in the creative industry, you need to make sure that your Adobe software is working well. You got to make sure your font management software is working well too. But by getting that modern hardware in and tested and vetted and ready to go, you're going to be in a much better place if an emergency comes up. An employee really needs a new machine right away. Having the peace of mind of knowing that your tech stack works on the M platform is going to be really important.
Yeah, and I think the reason you want to test it is as much as I know a lot of people more and more who are using M1s and love it. We have run into a few people who use very specific applications that for whatever reason, it's not a good experience today on the M1, and they've actually returned those Macs and gotten Intels. So I cannot guarantee that everything you do is going to work perfectly on an M1, but you can certainly give it a try. For my college student son, he needed Office, that works on the M1. He needed web apps, of course, those work. Paul, I know I was just on one of your websites. I don't know if all your products are M1, maybe but I know you've got quite a few that are M1 universal apps.
Yeah, I think Suitcase Fusion is right now. I think we're working on Universal Type Server right now.
Okay. The instant on of this M1 machine is incredible. The power brick, can you see that? It's so small. It's like a little iPad power brick. It's amazing. And of course the battery life and everything. So yes, that's one of the things I want to talk about. I'm looking around my camera, which is blocking my clicker. The other thing is, let's see, where is it? Ransom. I know there was something about ransom. Here it is. Ransomware is on the rise. I just mentioned this at the beginning. I think everyone knows this, but here's an article we posted about how to protect your Macs. And this is a team effort. Like Ross and the team and I do everything we can, but we cannot do it alone. Read up on how to protect yourself. And if you're unsure about any of this stuff, reach out to us so we can help. Password managers are a big part of that. I can't stress this enough. There's so much that we need to remain diligent about today. And then the last one, let's see, I had one more note. Oh, it was related to passwords. Here, well, it's right here. They're all right here for me. 1, 2, 3. How to take the annoyance out of your key passwords and passcodes. Once again, everyone's workflow is different. Everyone, I don't know any of my passcodes. I rely entirely on one password. Of course, I have to know one password to get into there. And to be honest, I have to know my Mac password to get into that. But okay, I know 2 passwords. I don't know the rest. I don't know my bank passwords. That Extensis password I just entered, Paul, I have no idea what that is. It's a randomly generated string of characters. and every password I use is unique. So read through this, protect yourself, because I just hate to see people, fall prey to these phishing scams when there are things you could do to protect yourself. And I think, Ross, I don't know about you, but I think once a week for the past month, I've gotten an email saying, ha ha ha, I've encrypted your computer or your iPhone, or I've stolen images. I think that was the story. I've stolen naughty images of you I'm going to post on the dark web if you don't pay me in Bitcoin. Okay, I don't have images, so I know this is total BS, but I'm sure this works for enough people that they're making money off of it. So just because someone says they're doing something doesn't mean it's true, but you want to do everything you can to protect yourself. Anything you guys would add to that? Don't store naughty photos of yourself on your computer. No one wants to touch that. Yeah.
I have received those messages though. It's kind of.
Yeah.
Just always, password managers are great. They're powerful things. I know some people who will actually take their medical and financial passwords. They'll just keep those pen and paper, just get those totally offline, because like any other system, as soon as it touches the internet, there's a possibility that something could happen there. And so it's often recommended to keep those local, safe, multiple copies in a safe deposit box, and on premise at home or at your work, whatever. Use of password managers, multi-factor authentication, the basics that we always talk about and often take for granted. Anything you can do to make your account not the easiest one to target, right? You don't need to be a marathon runner. You just need to be faster than the person next to you who's also running away from the bear.
Yeah.
So anything you can do to just get that target off of your assets is going to be a good thing.
Inspire me to change.
Nice play of words, Ross. Get the target off your assets. Yes. Sorry, Paul, you were going to say.
I said you've inspired me to go change some passwords today.
Yeah, good. As long as I've inspired at least one person to change some passwords, I've done my job. Well, Paul, thank you for joining us. I know we talk and work together often, and I just wanted to share a little bit of your story with everyone, so that maybe if there are people out there who want to do a better job of managing their fonts or their digital assets, they'll reach out to you or they'll reach out to us. We can help them get started. Ross, thank you. Paul, thank you. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you in two weeks. And I don't think I have anything scheduled, but I'll get something. Scheduled in 2 weeks. Have a great Labor Day in the meantime.
Everyone.
Okay, bye.